All right. It's a few minutes past the scheduled time. We should just get started now. So, welcome everyone to this month's Virtuoso 101. We're going to talk about a very exciting topic. We will talk about how to move away from your manual testing projects and executing things on from a manual perspective in QA to AI-driven test automation. There's been a lot of requests from different people for us to present this topic as well. And we're going to talk about some of our experiences that we have gone through this process with other customers and how we have gone about doing that. Um, I can see not able to hear you. Please do a sound check. Deepa, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, my bad. I was still in the backstage. Please continue. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so it's Deepa you have. All right. So everybody else, I'm assuming that they are able to hear me okay and they are able to see this. All right. And just to help you with the way we're going to conduct the webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to go to your Q&A section in the Zoom and you can post your queries within the Q&A. Feel free to do that. We would be taking in questions through the Q&A section so that it's easily answered and we can help you along the way during the webinar. We will not be opening it up for people to raise questions through audio at this point in time. So if in case you have any questions or comments to make, please feel free to make sure that you go to the Q&A section in your Zoom webinar and you're able to raise those questions there. Okay. All right. Very quickly to get started, what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce myself and Deepa shortly. Um, we are going to give you a quick overview about Virtuoso, what Virtuoso QA is. I'm sure a lot of you already know about Virtuoso, but if you don't, it'll be a good way for you to understand and get a quick overview about Virtuoso. We're going to get to the topic of how to move away from manual to AI-driven test automation. It's something which we have helped a lot of our customers, numerous customers do this, and we have a lot of experience in going through that process with them. So we're going to talk about a summary of those aspects. We're going to do a quick demo and we have the Q&A just after that. But just to be clear, feel free to ask your questions during the webinar at any point in time. We're going to keep some dedicated time at the end of the webinar, but if there are questions that we can answer while we are going through the webinar, we will do that as well. Okay. So with that, without any further ado, just a quick overview about myself. I'm Vinay Joseph. I'm the Director of Global Alliances at Virtuoso QA. I've been with apps and QA and software development for over 20 years now. And I love to simplify complex business problems with technology, just what we do with Virtuoso QA as well. With me, the co-panelists, we have Dipan Vitakar. Deepa, do you want to give a quick overview about yourself?
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. I'm Dipan Vitakar. I've joined Virtuoso for almost a year now, and this is our anniversary partner webinar. So, this marks my joining with Virtuoso as well. That being said, I have close to 20 years of experience in the space of IT, having worked with service partners like Capgemini, 10 years plus, Cognizant, around 6 years, and then moving into the product side of things with Tricentis, having spent around 5 plus years there. I am now with Virtuoso, mainly responsible to support our partner managers in developing the relationship. I manage the business development for all the GSIs here in Virtuoso, India. So very happy to work with you all guys and see the excitement that we're building together. Over to you, Vinay.
Thank you so much, Deepa. Now, just a quick overview of what we'll cover as the key takeaways. We want to make sure that we go through the challenges of manual testing. We want to answer the question on why AI-driven test automation and not just the standard test automation that you've all been working with, possibly are aware of. We're going to go through the major challenges of that you would face when you're moving away from manual to AI-driven test automation or any test automation project for that matter. But specifically for AI-driven test automation, what are the things to watch out for? What are the business and technical benefits? And what are the lessons that we have learned from some real life implementations across a whole host of customers? And we've got 160 plus customers who are executing millions of executions on Virtuoso. And that's something that we would explain in the coming slides. Now, just a quick overview about Virtuoso. So why do we exist? So Virtuoso primarily exists because of this. When we started the company, when the company was started in 2017, the some of these metrics were really stark, but even now, these are not from like 5 years back. These are very recent metrics, which talks about that 80% of the testing that happens on your web applications and other applications is primarily manually done. And the reason why that happens is because there's a huge capex involved. Test automation frameworks are really complex. They are very heavy maintenance, and they deliver a poor ROI, which is why that 80% is still at around 80%. Of the 20% which has been automated, there's about 62% which is through open source platforms like Selenium. And if you look at all the other open source platforms and the frameworks built around the similar open source platforms, it's going to be upwards of 80%. Top it up with the fact that, hey, you need really, really experienced and skilled estates, which essentially means that it's going to bump up your ROI even further. Your ROI is going to be much more delayed. And that is essentially why the challenges which we wanted to address and why we exist, right? And the two things it affects you a lot if you're not automating because of the current structure and why Selenium and all of those traditional frameworks are not up to speed is primarily number one, it reduces the release success because you're not able to automate enough. You're not able to automate at the same speed as what development can happen at the agile in sprint kind of a model. The second part is because you are not able to automate it very quickly, it essentially affects your release frequency because you would still need to do a heavy amount of testing through manual means. And even if it is automated means, it takes a long time for you to maintain those scripts, which is where there is this fact that, hey, Selenium users spend about 80% of the time on maintenance of existing scripts and only about 10% in authoring new scripts. So all of this affects your release success as well as the release frequency. Moving on to what is Virtuoso QA? So Virtuoso QA is primarily an AI-driven test automation platform. What we do very well is end-to-end functional testing for web applications and business systems, where we speed up testing by 10x compared to other traditional automation frameworks. We deliver real cost savings, and we are the quickest path for your business to achieve an ROI on test automation. And we are loved by a lot of our customers and partners alike. So we work with the likes of IBM, PwC, Accenture, FNZ, Deadlist, Marsh McLennan, and others as well. We've got 160 plus customers who are live on our platform, and combined with the number of customers we reach through our partners, it's a huge number that we are working towards. Now, where do we work? So what we are good at doing, we absolutely are focused on front-end UI, UX, and API testing. However, we can facilitate a little bit of compatibility, integration through and accessibility and security scanning, though our primary use case would remain to be front-end UI, UX, and APIs. Where we really fit well is if you've got new web apps or enterprise systems where you're doing considerable amount of change or implementations, that's where we fit in. The customers who come with us and join us, they find real value where for them time is of the essence. They want to invest in strategic automation, and they want to move into a quality first strategy where they can just trigger the test cases as soon as there's a commit from the development teams. And this is where we fit really well. Now, how do we differentiate ourselves from plenty of other tools which are there in the market? So number one, live authoring, which essentially means the speed at which you can write a test case is almost the same speed that at which you can write a manual test case. It's completely low code, no code, which essentially means you don't need really expensive estates. If you have estates, they can be supercharged with Virtuoso. If you've got your manual testing team, they can be reskilled very quickly to get started working on Virtuoso, because it's as simple as writing manual test cases in an English language syntax. Self-healing, which is one of the major issues which I pointed out earlier, why test automation projects do not succeed. It's primarily because they need to spend a lot of time in maintenance of those application test cases, but very less time is spent on creating new test cases, which is where we bring in the self-healing aspect, which reduces your manual intervention for maintenance significantly and allows you to focus on increasing the coverage and work on more value-added work rather than maintaining the test cases significantly. Now, how does it affect you as a GSI or as a customer and customer? Number one, everyone can automate, whether it's your manual teams, your business analysts, your product teams, your developers, or your estates. All of them would be able to automate using the same platform. There's no over reliance on engineers, and not that we don't want it to be reliant on engineers. It's essentially there's no over reliance on engineers, and a lot of work and the heavy lifting can be done with the manual testing teams as well, without without any reliance on technical engineers. The second part is you would be able to automate very early in the project lifecycle. Almost 160 plus of our customers, when they get started with us, they are able to achieve test automation within the sprint itself, which reduces the automation effort, it reduces the maintenance, and it reduces the number of FTs they need to deliver automation service. And all of this allows you to transition to leaner teams, because when we start with majority of your customers who are already automated, they'll have a manual team, which would be very, very business focused, who understand the business really well. They'll have an automation team, which would take those manual test cases and then convert them to automation. But with Virtuoso, we see more and more that our customers are going to a unified team, which is a mix of manual and automation teams, and that reduces the amount of FTEs they require and can transition to a very leaner process. Now, ultimately, for your end customers, what we are going to impact is cost, where your ROI would be significantly better when you are executing automation projects with Virtuoso. The quality of your application significantly improves, primarily because you are able to automate more, you're able to uncover defects with higher coverage, you're able to reduce the amount of time it takes for you to go live, primarily because with the quicker automation, testing is not a bottleneck. And that basically means that developers and the product teams, they get the flexibility with quicker automation to release production ready code and releases very quickly into production. And all of this reduces the risk for your programs, because you're not uncovering major defects at the later stages. You're uncovering those major defects at a very early stage in the project as well. Now, let's go to the topic at hand and understand, hey, what are the challenges that teams will face when they start to move away from manual testing, right? So number one, initial CapEx, right? There is a significant CapEx for you to create automation projects. And this is a pushback from the customer teams and customers, where they are not able to put in that amount of money, where there is significant maintenance effort as well down the line. And that it's essentially allowing the teams to continue, or allowing the customers, or forcing the customers to continue with the manual testing path, because, hey, there's a heavy CapEx involved. With AI, and I will showcase that shortly in a demo, this comes down significantly to as high as 80% of what a project would cost compared to traditional tools like Selenium or Cypress, etc. Now, why that happens is primarily because there is no framework setup cost, there is no um, creation of bridge object models and setting up end-to-end frameworks. All of that is ready-made with Virtuoso. All you need is a URL and your manual test cases that you have already written, and that would allow you to write test cases very quickly without much overhead at all. The second most important aspect when you're moving away from manual testing to test automation is reskilling. And this is very, very prominent when we are talking to the GSIs. Um, Team, I just want to take a quick pause here. People who are raising their hands, what I would suggest is if they have a question or a comment to make, could you please go to your Q&A and you can type it out there. We will not be taking in any questions at this point in time, but however, if you have your questions in Q&A, Deepa, if you would be able to um, take those questions once we get to the demo, we will be answering those questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. So team, the second most important aspect is reskilling the teams, right? So you have very good depth of knowledge in terms of your domain and the applications that are being tested. You need those resources. You don't want to lose their skills. With Virtuoso, you would be able to, and with AI-driven test automation, you would be able to retain those skills. You would be able to make sure that they are reskilled very easily with just as low as 6 to 8 hours to start writing test cases on their own independently, maintaining test cases, executing and reporting on them as well, right? And that is what AI-driven test automation can do to such projects. Now, this, in a sense, reduces the risk, because one of the major reasons, again, why customers are not moving away from manual testing is primarily because of the risk it introduces, because two things can happen. One, when such projects come into place, they would have to remove their existing knowledgeable resources. They would not be able to spend more on hiring SDETs, and that is where these risks are always weighed, and sometimes those investments are not made by your end customers. And that is something which can significantly go down because of reducing the CapEx. You're able to leverage your existing teams. It improves the risk profile, and it also allows you to get to a very high coverage with test automation, where the whole aspect that test automation is only used for smoke testing and maybe part of the regression, it doesn't go away. So it improves your risk profile of your projects as well. The maintenance costs that would come in significantly as well, right? Anybody who's worked with code-based solutions, traditional solutions, they know that you need to put aside a significant amount of effort, not just from a CapEx perspective to build those test cases, but also to make sure that those test cases are maintained regularly. Because if you don't put that amount of effort in maintaining, those test scripts are not functional and they're of no use at all. And lastly, the most important thing that we've seen when we've worked with our customers through this journey is the cultural resistance as well, right? Even though it's easy to use, it's got significant amount of benefits from because of AI. There's still cultural objections, primarily because they don't get the same feel of trying it out on their own, and how that manual test case would give you the confidence and would allow you to do those exploratory aspects and those assertions which cannot be automated all the time with test automation, traditional test automation tools. So that cultural resistance is more about business communication, and the easier you can make it so that it's as easy for your existing teams to onboard, and you're able to come up with a plan. And we'll talk about the plan in terms of how to approach it to reduce that cultural resistance. But those are those aspects which would allow you to be more successful with such projects, because cultural resistance and business communication, making sure that you're going through the whole 9 yards to explain why we are automating, how it would help, and how you're taking the whole team, your existing teams along in that process, that would reduce the amount of cultural resistance as well. And we'll talk about how AI helps you do that shortly. Now, one of the major things which everyone will ask is, hey, what is the ROI if we are moving from um, manual to a code-based solution versus Virtuoso, right? And then we have done that with a lot of our customers, and what we've seen is that the ROI is as high as 11x for larger teams, and the bigger the team, the bigger the return on investment, which was not the case earlier, primarily with the code-based solutions. If you're just comparing the amount of effort which is put in authoring test cases, automated test cases, executing, maintaining them, and reporting on them, it's significantly high compared to traditional code-based solutions, right? And that ROI comes, how it comes, we'll talk about that in the demo as well. But primarily, what are the lessons that we have learned, um, and in what we have experienced with our customers and how they've gone about doing their manual to AI-driven test automation journeys? Number one, super important for you to evaluate what your as is and define a to-be model. It is very, very important that you take small steps initially, but scale smartly. So you have to define a set of um, initial successes that you want to get. So the most easiest one is, hey, you start with a smoke test, you then build to a regression test, and then you get started with your in sprint testing as well. And those are the ways which your team would make sure that, hey, the learning curve is significantly reduced. You are adjusting to the learning curve, and you're not putting too much pressure on the teams, which would eventually lead to uh, poor poor ROI on your investment. Second most important thing, and I've covered one more, but let me go to the third one, which would be being ROI driven. That is really, really important. You know what your teams cost, you know what their effort is being spent on, and you have a very clear view of what that would go down to when you are able to put in the AI-driven test automation, but be very clear on what the return on investment is from your from the business side. If you're able to do more releases, if you're able to improve the quality of your applications, those are all aspects which is really, really important. So you can define those success criterias as goals and KPIs, and you track those success criterias throughout your automation projects at every stage, so that whatever ROI analysis you're doing at the start of the project, you can continuously show how you're comparing against those, and that would improve the confidence from those who hold the budget to start making sure that they can make those investments and they can start getting those return on their investments as well. The fourth and fifth most important thing would be training of the teams, right? So it is really, really important that you go through our proper onboarding process, where we go through a structured way of taking them through the initial set of trainings, hands-on exercises, give them some real life project examples, and then start building on that slowly. It's significant faster compared to any other automation platform, but making sure that we can adjust to the team's aptitude and skills is really, really important. And lastly, if you want to really go for it and we get the benefits, you need to start integrating with your DevOps processes. It's super important that you weave in to your DevOps processes how this automation, and we'll talk about how Virtuoso helps you do that very quickly as well, right? Okay, with that, I know that there are some questions that have been raised. I would be doing a demo, but before we get started on the demo, Deepa, are there any questions that I can answer before we get started?
Yes, certainly. There are a couple of questions. So we have Srinivas who is asking that is there any way relevant to Copilot which we use in projects currently?
Yeah, so essentially, Copilot is helping you write manual test cases. I need to understand what technology use it. But primarily what we are building is we are also building towards a co-pilot kind of a framework with agentic AI. We will be talking about some of the aspects of that agentic AI which has already gone live, which a lot of our customers are using and they're finding it extremely useful. So we'll talk about that step IQ, but ultimately it's something where we are using um, enterprise LLMs to make sure that OpenAI enterprise LLMs to make sure that we can solve some of the major problems from a test authoring, execution, reporting, and maintenance perspective. I hope that answers your question, but if not, feel free to um, raise a follow-up query. Deepa, any other questions?
Yes, yes. Then we have another question from an anonymous attendee. What's the use of QA with this tool? However, it's doing without any monitoring.
So, what is the use of QA with this tool? So, absolutely. So, let me just explain. So, what we are doing is essentially doing tests on the non-production environments, right? But there are some of our customers who are starting to build very efficient processes where they are running hourly tests on their production and non-production environments, which gives them a clear view of what is failing, especially where there's a lot of code being checked in by multiple developers and there are a lot of changes being deployed into your production systems. So they are running tests on an hourly basis to make sure that their basic processes are not following. It's not a application performance monitoring tool, so it's not something which is monitoring with agents at the back end in terms of whether the processes are failing or not. However, with the regular tests on an hourly basis, it does help customers understand what is the state of the quality of their environments with the changes that are going in, and that gives them a good view of how it would work out in the production environment as well. I hope that answers your question. Any one more question before we move into the demo, and then we'll take the questions at the end of the demo.
Uh, Absolutely. So I would merge two questions together, Vinay. One would
Mhm,
be, can we do security testing with this tool? And
mhm.
can it automate desktop applications?
Right. So we are building our capability to automate desktop applications, and we are expecting something to come out by the end of this year, which would allow you to automate desktop applications as well. On the security testing, so that's not a core use case within our tool. However, if we have workarounds where if you want to use OS Zap, you've written your functional journeys on OS Zap. We can't do SAST, which is static application security testing. However, for DAST, dynamic application security testing, you can integrate your functional flows with OS Zap, which essentially identifies all the vulnerabilities at runtime in your dynamic execution of your applications within your functional flows, and that doesn't include any separate investment. So how it improves your security testing profile by two ways. Number one, it allows you to make use of the investment that you've done with your functional flows and use the same functional flows without any changes, run it through in tandem with your OWASP app, so that while those functional flows are getting automated, it goes through OWASP app and it identifies all the packets and identifies all the vulnerabilities which can be uncovered without making any additional investment at all. Right now, you would still need vulnerability experts and security experts who can analyze those reports from OWASP app and give a recommendation to the developers in terms of what fixes need to be made. However, it still significantly reduces your investment in security testing, and it allows you to do that in line with all the changes that are happening. Okay. So with that, let's just understand how Virtuoso QA, with all of its features, allows you to make that switch from manual testing to AI-driven test automation very easy. So firstly, this is the Virtuoso tool. There is nothing for you to install, configure, or download. All you need is essentially your email ID and a password of your choice, and that would allow you to just log in and get started automating your applications. So we are hosted on AWS. We've got multiple instances based on where your customer data is hosted. You can use one of those instances, but it's a completely SaaS application. So there's nothing for you to configure at all. So your lead time to get started is it's almost zero. So if you have your URL and the test cases, you can just get started writing your test cases, executing them, reporting on them, and maintaining them all through this web-based console itself. Now, if your applications are behind a firewall, then you don't have to worry about it as well. There are multiple options available for that as well. So one of those options is Bridge. So we have Virtuoso Bridge, which majority of your, I would say 70 to 80% of our enterprise customers whose environments are not exposed to the internet, they are using the Bridge to create an encrypted tunnel. So you need to install a Bridge client on one of your VMs, which is sitting on your customer's infrastructure or the test infrastructure. And that allows you to create that encrypted tunnel, goes through our Bridge server, and that allows Virtuoso to access our URLs with the systems under test, even if they're sitting behind a firewall. You can also use um, fixed IP, which allows us to basically open up the fixed IP um, firewalls within your systems, and any access which is coming from those fixed IPs would go through to your system under test and would allow us to access those applications and use it seamlessly as well. All right. Now, moving on to what Virtuoso can do in terms of authoring, execution, reporting, and maintenance. So how does it make it so easy with leveraging AI? So let's just understand a simple set of applications and see how it works. So as soon as I come in, I can create multiple goals. The goals are primarily a collection of test cases which are aligned to a test objective. So you could have a goal for, say, regression testing or smoke testing or in-sprint testing, and you could put all the test cases associated with that test lifecycle objective within that goal. So now you can also create different goals as per the functional modules as well. Now let's just understand how you can write a test case, because that's the most CapEx oriented part with the traditional automation frameworks. So let's just understand if we have a URL, right? And I've already put that URL into our environment so that that environment includes all the information with the username, password, and things like that. It makes life easy for me in terms of creating test cases. Now I've got a checkpoint that I need to write. So for example, I'm on the login page now. I need to log into the application. So I create a checkpoint. Now, as you can see, it already starts thinking in terms of, hey, what do I need to write? Let's start with something which I'll wait for to say, look at the text called reinsurance so that I can be I can be comfortable that, hey, this page has loaded correctly. Um, so I will just say wait for reinsurance, and it automatically identifies the reinsurance text on the screen. It goes green. Now, next, the step IQ is already thinking, because it's the AI in it is essentially thinking based on the things that it can see on loading on the right hand side, because it has already navigated to this URL. It's showing how that URL comes up on the screen, and it's already thinking, hey, how do I help the tester write the test cases? It has identified that the environment has a username variable. It has seen that there's a username field here. So it has already linked both those. I select it and I just click on save. Similarly, it will then start thinking and say that, hey, I've done the username. Now let's look at the password, and it would just write the password field as well, and it would allow you to write the test cases. Now, this essentially makes life easier for you to write those test cases seamlessly and make sure that you are able to confirm if any of those aspects like the dashboard and things like that, which are already coming, it all already gives you those suggestions. Now, You can also make changes to this. So for example, if you wish to make some changes to it and make it much more readable, so you can always do that. So you can say that, hey, I want to do it in the field username. Similarly, you can do it for the field password and so on and so forth. And that allows you to write those test cases seamlessly without wasting any effort in getting the details and creating those test cases seamlessly. So you can see here with a few clicks, I'm able to write an end-to-end scenario where I'm able to log into the URL, wait for the text to appear on the screen, make sure that the login page is loaded correctly. Then I use my username, password, and click on the login button, and I can see if a dashboard or a playground has appeared correctly. And you can see that this is something that the test AI has suggested, but you can change it to confirm that you can see a playground already appear on the screen as well, right? So this is how you would be able to write test cases very quickly. Now, writing test cases is one part of it, and you can see here while we are writing test cases, where I click on the I am done button, what the tool is also doing in the background, it's capturing all the details in terms of the selector information and everything else that is required for this to be identified correctly, and making sure that all the details continue to, if they continue to evolve, how they can change and how to understand if it has changed and self-heal it. So as you can see, every field, it is already capturing all of that in the background, and it reduces the amount of time it takes, significant amount of time it takes while you're doing the test authoring in terms of identifying those XPath IDs, and also when it changes, how those changes need to be reflected. So let's just understand, if it identifies all of that information, how it uses that information to self-heal your test cases as well. So here's an example of how it does that. So when any of these XPaths or IDs change, which is quite significantly would happen in your test automation projects, and if you're using Selenium and other tools, you can imagine the amount of healing or maintenance that you need to do can be looked at from here. There are so many fields which would change in just one flow. This is just one test case, and just times that by say 5,000 for a major application, and you can imagine the amount of maintenance effort which would be required. But with Virtuoso, when such changes are identified at runtime without any manual intervention, it identifies that some of the selectors have changed. It then predicts those elements on the screen with all the information it has captured in the previous step while it's authoring or maintaining. And with that, it is able to, at runtime, figure out what is a new element selector and continue to update the details and run the journey without any manual intervention, right? And that allows them to allows the test automation teams to significantly reduce the maintenance effort, because you don't need to learn all of those details. And especially when you're moving away from manual to test automation, you will not have teams who would understand all of this information immediately. They would not know how to capture the XPath and IDs. They're not engineers. They're really good people who understand the business really well. But all of that is kind of um, it's kind of given a wrapper around it with Virtuoso, which helps do all of that in the background while your teams are just focused on writing test cases with the simple NLP syntax that you can see, right? So the NLP syntax not just covers the simplest of things that you can also extend it. And that's where, if you have your engineering teams already, they can build spectacularly fast NLP syntaxes for their own. So for example, if you want to compare to PDFs, or you want to create an assertion which is really complex, you can do all of that with extensions which are written in JavaScript. And even there, we allow you to make sure that you can use an AI assistant to provide some instructions and get the JavaScript code, which allows you to enhance the NLP syntax in addition to all the standard syntax which is available. 99% of your test steps would only require the standard NLP syntaxes, which are already available. There could be a few syntaxes or extensions that you may have to come up with, depending on the complexity of your application, which would allow you to do that. Now, there are also some really fantastic things that you can do outside of functional testing, like accessibility violations, accessibility testing. So we've got some extensions which would allow us to when you load the page, it just automatically identifies all through the Axe plugin, all the Axe violations which are aligned to your accessibility standards, and you would be able to get a report and identify what all things need to be corrected, right? Now, we've talked about the maintenance aspect. We've talked about the authoring aspect. Let's just talk about a few more other things from an execution perspective. So it has a seamless integration with any of your CI/CD tools. I'm just giving an example of Azure DevOps or Jenkins. So you can integrate it with your ADO applications as well. And what that would do is once you trigger your test cases from ADO, where you have already written test cases, you have all of those DevOps processes defined in your ADO, as well as your test management or test cases are also defined from a reporting perspective in ADO. You can create your test plans and everything in ADO. You can define those pipelines within ADO, which would help you integrate with Virtuoso, and it's something which takes about 30 minutes for you to set up. And once you've done that, you can just go ahead and execute or run those pipelines, which would make sure that as soon as those pipelines are triggered, you would be able to see within Virtuoso the executions which get triggered from those pipelines. So once you can see, once those pipelines start getting executed from and starts to showcase what all things it's starting to do, one of the steps would be for us from ADO to trigger the test cases within Virtuoso. So as soon as it says run Virtuoso tests, after it's done all the other things from installation perspective, you would be able to see that it would trigger a test case within Virtuoso. So you can see here, it has already triggered a test case from Virtuoso, and the results from those executions will then go and sit within your test plans as well. So you would be able to see with those tests executed in Virtuoso, how many passed, how many failed. So your reporting can still be your ADO, while it just seamlessly connects from ADO to Virtuoso, gets the executions triggered, gets the results back from Virtuoso as well, and puts that in your existing ADO framework. And then the same is true for any test management tool that you're using, whether it's ALM or Jira or anything for that matter, right? So that takes care of your execution. However, you can see a lot of reporting within Virtuoso as well, right? So there is a significant amount of reporting which can be driven from Virtuoso in terms of, hey, looking at it from a project level, at an org level, drill down to a project. Within a project, you can see a lot of reports. And you also have the options to see a proper reporting where you would be able to see end-to-end metrics within customized reports as well. So you would be able to see your analytics add-on, which just prepares a lot of reports in terms of, hey, which goals are passing, which goals are not passing, the overall executions that have happened. You can filter it by dates, and you would be able to see how many test cases passed, failed, the outcomes from your journeys, and so on and so forth as well, right? So this takes care of your execution part as well. But just one thing to highlight here, you would be able to make sure you can do your cross-browser compatibility testing as well. So when you're creating an execution plan, we are already integrated with both Browser Stack and Lambda Test. So if you have your Browser Stack or Lambda Test subscriptions, you can use those, or we come with some default executions on Browser Stack and Lambda Test as well. So you can define what are the different OS browser combinations that you would want to run this set of test cases. You can select the browsers and the version of those browsers as well. And you can also schedule it, or you can integrate it with your ADO or any other Jenkins pipeline, and you can also define what environment you wish to execute this. It could be a default environment, a test or a dev or a non-prod. And the way tests are written in Virtuoso, it doesn't matter if you have already captured those things which are environment specific in the environment tab, the same journey can execute across multiple environments as well. Okay. With that, I think we got about 12 minutes left. So Deepa, I'm more than happy to take some questions and make sure that we can answer those.
Absolutely. I see there are 17 questions that are there in our Q&A. Okay, so getting started with, I think you have already addressed about can we do security testing and can we automate desktop applications? So we start with the next question from Santosh. Can we also automate database and can we also do parallel execution?
Absolutely. So that's a very good question. So let me start with the parallel execution. Absolutely, yes. So the way Virtuoso executes, it's allows you to take up to 100 parallels, which means that you would be able to reduce significantly if you have a large regression test base, which is what most of our customers use. You would be able to reduce amount of time it takes for you to execute that regression test. So you can have um, up to 100 parallels, and there are some limitations when you're using bridge, etc. as well. Now, with regards to database testing, absolutely, you can do database testing as well. So there are certain aspects where we have extended the application, which allows you to connect to any databases. You can also pass any of your database queries, and you would be able to get a response back from those databases queries as well, which would allow you to execute end-to-end testing. So now it's not just the databases. One of the things which I didn't showcase is also the fact that you can do API testing all in the same flow. So whether it's your database, your APIs, or your UI, all of that can be combined in a single flow, which allows you to run end-to-end tests, which may span across APIs and databases, etc. as well. So you can do database testing absolutely in the
Okay,
interest
so
of
the
time.
next
Yeah,
one
go ahead.
is, yeah, the next one is this a scriptless tool like Tosca or does it need scripting like Selenium?
Okay, so this is completely built in. There is nothing else that you require. The whole model for Virtuoso is that the execution happens on our environments on AWS cloud, which allows you to use AI in significantly improved ways compared to other traditional tools, which are all running on your desktops or on servers. They're not able to leverage AI properly. With Virtuoso, you can leverage AI in the ways I've shown in terms of Step IQ, where it suggests tests looking at the screen. And we're building the next stage of it, which would be it would do a co-pilot. So essentially, what I was doing is essentially just identifying the fields and taking those suggestions. Now, the next step that we are releasing in a few months' time is a co-pilot, which just automatically identifies the scenario and writes test cases on its own. But we use it for significantly other things as well, like test data. So if you got test data that you wish to build into your test cases, you can use AI to create test data. You can also use AI to also come up with root cause analysis, which is significantly important when you have failures. So if you encounter failures and you don't know exactly how this failures occurred, AI will look at all the logs that we are capturing, and it would then come up with a feasible explanation, which you can look at, pass it on to your developers, and even raise a ticket where all of those details will go to the developers, where that would allow the developers to fix those issues much faster. So there's no to and fro between the developer and the tester that, hey, it works on my machine, it doesn't work in your environment, and so on and so forth. It's got a link that can be sent to the developer as part of your Jira ticket, which would have the link to this execution, all the previous test steps, the logs and everything can be viewed by the developer, and they can look at it, and they can also understand what has possibly caused that defect. So yeah, go ahead, Deepa. Maybe we can tackle
Yes.
the other
The next
questions as
question is, it is from Nagesh,
well.
and he is asking that how are we going to test data level?
Mhm.
Example, ETL.
Yeah. So let me show you some examples of how we can do at a ETL level as well, because we're starting to see some of our customers already starting to use that. So when you're writing SQL queries, essentially at a ETL level, you want to see what the source data looks like, and you want to see the target, and you want to make sure that there is a transformation happening between the source and the target. So a lot of our customers are starting to, and I'm looking for an example where we have used a database here, but we can share you some videos later. But if you've got your ETL flows defined, where you have the source database where you want to confirm or load in the data, and then you want to see at the target if the correct transformations have happened, you can write those assertions with Virtuoso. So which would allow you to make sure that the source to target transformations can be validated at an ETL level. Okay. There are
Okay.
some other aspects as well. So if you can convert them to JSON, so a lot of the ETL flows are also happening at a JSON level. So they look at the data, convert that to JSON, and they compare the JSON as well. So those are aspects which are absolutely doable with Virtuoso.
All right. Thank you, Vinay. With that, the next question from Abul is, can we test automate Salesforce applications integrated with other systems?
Absolutely, you can. And in fact, we work really well with Salesforce. So I'm glad that you asked that question. So you can see here it's a Salesforce end-to-end flow where we are starting with login, creating a sales, opening the sales module, opening an account, adding a new account. All of that, as you can see, is written in plain English. And Salesforce is notorious because it's heavily um, it keeps changing the XPath and selectors. With self-healing, it significantly improves the amount of maintenance you need to do in Salesforce. And in the same journey, you can start with a Salesforce flow, and then you can possibly move into something else, maybe a Dynamics 365 or any other integrating applications, and all of that can be tested in a single flow as well. So absolutely doable with Salesforce. In fact, we've got some ready-made assets. So if you join our Discord channel, you can search for Virtuoso in Discord. You would be able to put in a request to join our Virtuoso channel. And within Discord, we have posted some default flows for both Salesforce and Dynamics 365, which you can just start downloading and point it to your environments and start executing those tests immediately.
Vinay, while it is really nice if they would join our Discord channel, I would like to have a different or rather a separate meeting with Abul and our SMEs so that we can guide them to the right link and also understand that what they're trying to achieve. In that way, it'll help us to go ahead and if there is any integration or extension that needs to be written, we can help them out with that as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll Abul, if you feel free, I will be posting the details of how to reach out to us when you need help. So you can feel free to reach out to either me, Vinay, or my colleague Deepa and with the car. We have our email IDs posted on the link on the screen right now. So if you have any follow-up questions, I'm conscious that we've got a few minutes. I'd love to cover as many questions as I can, but if you want to reach out to us and ask more questions or set up follow-up discussions, we are happy to help you with that. Go ahead, Deepa.
Sure.
Uh,
Yes, I'll be really quick. We have 19 open questions and just more minutes. We'll try to cover as much as possible. Can you
yeah.
share the link to access Virtuoso QA? Please write to us. We will go ahead and we will give you the access. Just rushing through, Vinay. Don't mind. The
Yeah.
next one is from Nisha. Is the XPath automatically derived? How does it know that which identifier is best?
Yeah. So it just automatically looks at the different ways on the DOM that you can access the element, it automatically identifies those identifiers. So that's not something that you need to be worried about at all. You have the option to customize it if you wish to, but for all practical purposes, the people who are moving away from manual testing, they would not be that tech savvy. If that's the case, it works easily for them because it just identifies all the ways that you can get to, whether it's a CSS selector, XPath, and if there are elements available from JS path because it's shadow root is there, or if there's a ID within your element, so it automatically identifies and populates that.
Okay, with that, we have another question from Nisha. Have you
Mhm.
automated payments testing Swift, SIPA, MX, empty messages?
Yeah, absolutely. See, we do a lot of testing with Shopify, and a lot of our customers are digital agencies who do e-commerce testing as well. We've got a lot of customers outside of those agencies, direct customers who test their e-commerce websites as well. So that's a normal scenario that in an e-commerce you would look at the payment automation as well. There are aspects of payment automation that may need a database of credit cards or test data and things like that, which needs to be integrated, or you need to use APIs. So even if you have APIs that you want to test from your payment side, you can use all of that seamlessly with Virtuoso.
All right. So we are just 1 minute
Mhm.
to our uh, webinar session. If people can wait for just 5 more minutes, we would love to finish off with the questions. The
Okay.
next question for you, Vinay, is can we automate Tableau dashboards?
Yeah, in fact, that's, I mean, I haven't specifically done Tableau, but recently somebody asked me the question of, hey, can we do Power BI? And I had created a flow as well for Power BI. So absolutely, you can automate Power BI as well. And that's and I'm just saying by default, if I can do Power BI, I'm pretty sure that you guys would be able to do Tableau as well. So here's one example that I want to showcase where um, it goes through the Power BI screens, and it validates aspects of a chart. You can look at a specific chart, so you can look at drill into the test cases. You can validate specific aspects within a dashboard, and then you can look at specifically for some of the elements, right? So for example, hey, you want to look at the category breakdown, and then you can also look for elements within category breakdown and confirm that, hey, PowerPoint, for example, and what is the value just next to the PowerPoint, if it's the expected value or not. So absolutely doable. And in fact, if it can work on Power BI and by extension, I'll have to check if some of our customers are using. I'm pretty sure they're using for Tableau as well. But yes, all of those can be tested with Virtuoso.
Great. Next is from Bharat. Is this for web apps only?
Yeah, so we answered that before. So primarily we are for web app and API. However, we are putting in our roadmap, we've got two more additions coming in this year. It would be desktop and mobile native applications as well. So currently you can test on mobile web. So if you've got flows that you've written and you need to test it on an iPhone or an Android system, so absolutely doable with the browser stack integration that we've got. But even without that, also you can change the resolution and make sure that you can write test cases accordingly. But yes, you have the option um, to test primarily web API databases right now, and we'll be extending it to desktop and mobile apps, mobile native applications by later this year.
Thank you, Vinay. Next we have from Srinivas.
Mhm.
This looks like as a keyword driven tool.
Mhm.
Your comments on that?
Yeah, so this is essentially what we have done is we're not focused on whether it's a keyword driven. You're trying to compare it with more of a keyword driven frameworks from from Selenium or things that you can build on top of Selenium. This is completely our IP. We have used a lot of open source libraries, but primarily it's something that we build on top of it, which allows you to write test cases with simple NLP syntax. It's not just keywords, you can write your own keywords as well. But yes, it does quite a lot with those keywords, which is not just UI testing, but UI, API, and other testing as well.
All right. So the next one is, do we have API healing? Also, does it support mobile apps? If yes, does it support mobile healing as well?
So as I said earlier, we currently do not support mobile native. Mobile web is absolutely supported, and self-healing on mobile web absolutely works. When we are bringing it on mobile native, yes, the idea would be to build in the self-healing on mobile native apps as well eventually. Um, on on the first part of the questions, sorry, Deepa, can you just remind me on this first part of the question?
Yeah. Do you have API healing?
Yeah. So
Right.
at this point in time, it is in our roadmap to bring in API healing. However, API at this point in time is pretty much very dynamic as well. So you can pass in variables and things like that, which allows you to keep it very dynamic. But from a healing perspective of API, it's something that would be coming in by the later part of this year as well.
Sure. So the next one, I'm responding to Rajat. He wants to know that if you have a demo version, Rajat, please write to us. I'm sharing our email ID once more. So we will be more than happy enough to go ahead and give you a demo version of our tool. Second one is from Manikadan. Does it allow testing of native apps in mobile, iOS, Android?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we are not yet supporting mobile native applications. However, we would be bringing in that feature by the later part of this year.
Okay. With that, the next question is from Pavan. Is it possible to do visual testing with this tool?
So a lot of our customers do extend it to visual testing as well. So they have built simple solutions on HTML which do pixel by pixel comparison. So there's a lot of visual testing which you can do on Virtuoso, and um, some of it can be built on top of it. So I know there's a customer which is essentially comparing two PDF files visually pixel by pixel, and if there's any difference between the template and the generated PDF file, it automatically flags it. So those are tests which some of our customers have written on top of Virtuoso. Absolutely.
Okay, with that, we have a question from Preeti. Can it
Hmm.
support Octane test management?
Optum test management. So yes, absolutely, because Optum has APIs which can integrate. So Virtuoso is completely integratable with APIs. So as long as you have a mechanism to access and put in data via APIs, you can extract data from Virtuoso. So we have some extensions which we have created, which by default work for Jira X-Ray and Test Trail. But we have some customers who have built stuff on top of it to connect to Optum as well.
Okay, then the next one is from Manoj. Can we automate mainframe applications like banking applications?
So as long as those mainframe applications are web enabled, I mean, there's a web enabled screen wrapper. Absolutely, you can. But if it's a desktop application, as I said, we would be putting in the support for that by later part of this year.
Okay, then the next question is, can it handle UI and API in the same test case?
Yes, absolutely, it can, as I mentioned earlier. So if I am writing a simple journey, if I need to write something from a UI perspective, I write all those UI aspects, and then I can call an API and just make sure that I can call that API, pass the parameters, and get a response back from that API as well. So absolutely possible.
Okay, with that, the next one is, can we import manual test cases? Does it automate those as well?
Yeah, so with Step IQ, it can automatically understand the context. You have the option to import your requirements into Virtuoso. You can drag and drop your feature files or other mechanisms that you have or text files which would allow you to create those requirements. Once you have created those requirements, it basically looks something like this. Let me just showcase this. So you would have a view of all your requirements, and you can start tracking what are the automated journeys that you've written against those manual the test cases or the requirements. And you can also see the traceability here, right? Which allows you to see that, hey, of the journeys that you've written against a module or an epic or a user story, how many of those are passing or failing or not executed. And that gives you a view at the point in time. Now, from a manual test perspective, with Step IQ, we've already brought in the feature where it looks at the context, and it automatically suggests you those test cases. With Copilot, what we are building is the option for us to look at that agent, AI agent, which will look at the requirement, look at the screen and create those test cases with Copilot. So essentially, it would read the manual test cases and generate those test cases automatically as well. And that's going to come in the next quarter.
Okay, with that, the next question is from Sinu. Does it automate SSO applications?
So I mean, absolutely, it can integrate with single sign-on. In fact, if you have applications which are, I mean, in the sense, you can integrate your single sign-on with Virtuoso in the sense that if you wish your team to log in to Virtuoso only using the single sign-on mechanism that you use within your organization or with your customer's organization, you can do that. It support any SAML-based single sign-on, whether it's Okta, Ping Identity, as your AD. But if your question is more in terms of, hey, I've got something which is integrated with single sign-on, and it only supports, say, for example, OTP, which is generated. So yes, even for those scenarios, we have the option where you can integrate your OTP mechanisms with Virtuoso. You can write an extension, and that would allow you to use the OTP extension to generate OTP and log into application. So absolutely doable either way.
Okay, the next question is from Venkat. Can we use Virtuoso tool to compare data between source and target?
Yeah.
SAP automations, are they supported? Mainframe file validations, are they supported?
Yeah, so see, anything which can be accessed from a database or through flat files, absolutely doable. Mainframe, if you're talking about a web wrapper, absolutely. If it is a desktop-based application, no. But if it is, yeah, it's anything which is web or API, absolutely can be tested with Virtuoso.
Okay, the next one is from Satish. Topic AI test case generation, whether this tool automatically picks story from Jira, writes the test cases. If yes, what is the accuracy level?
Yeah. So, as I said, the next aspect of our integration is AI agents, which will integrate with your test management solutions to pick up the user stories and write test cases. At this point in time, the accuracy that we have seen, especially with structured applications like D365, is significantly high. um, it can understand from the context, and it can start filling in the forms and generating data, even map it to your test data. So that is a session we should do another time. We will do another session to showcase how we are progressing towards that. But as I showcase the Step IQ is essentially looking at the context that you've provided. Say just log in, and it understands, and then it automatically suggests what fields to be filled and what data to be picked up from your environments or your test data tables.
Thank you, Vinay. The next one we have from Meena. A
Mhm.
few more details on parallel execution. When we initiate 100 test cases, how would it happen? And
Yeah.
she also asked, can we do workflow automation with dynamic changes in data environment?
Yeah, Workday, some of our customers are already using it for Workday testing. So from a question of, hey, um, how can you do parallel testing? So if you got a regression test suite, which is thousands of test cases, and if you if you want to run it in parallel mode, you can absolutely do that. You can select an amount of parallelism based on the environment that you're pointing it towards. So if it is a lower environment, like a dev environment, etc., you would probably use less number of parallelisms. But if it's a pre-prod environment, which is more built to scale from a production perspective, then you can scale up the number of parallelisms, and that would allow the test cases to be executed in parallel and make sure that you are able to reduce amount of time it takes for you to run your complete regression cycle.
Okay, so the next one that we have is how can we enroll to Virtuoso Associate level certification? I will reach out to you. Could you please share with me your email ID? I see you as an anonymous attendee. If you can kindly type in your email ID, we would love to go ahead and share it. All right. The next one is from Anup Kumar. Can we automate testing of POS ATM transactions?
As long as those POS applications are web enabled. So I know that there are certain POS applications which are tested through web, and if you are testing through web, absolutely you can. There would be some amount of manual testing required in POS because you would still need to do some testing on the physical interfaces within a POS machine itself. So, but if it's the web part you want to test, absolutely doable. So conscious of time now, Deepa, I think we can take some of those questions, and team, just feel free to reach out to us on these email IDs, and we will try and help you, and we'll cover some of those questions offline as well. But I think that's all we wanted to cover. We are 15 minutes post the scheduled time. It's great to see so much participation, and we'd love to hear from you what all topics you wish to cover as well. So feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much for this great participation and engagement. We really look forward to more ideas from you in terms of what we should cover. This is a monthly series. If you have registered, you would automatically get all the notifications for the next ones that we are slotted in May. But feel free to help us identify what topics you want to cover, and we'll be making sure that we can adjust that in the upcoming webinars as well. Deepa, thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Vinay.
Thank you so
And
much.
we will reach out to you with the unanswered questions for sure, alongside with the recording. And feel free to reach out to us, as Vinay said. We'll be more than happy enough to reconnect with you. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.